Welcome to TECHsplained, my new video series where I attempt to demystify technical trail riding by hopping off the bike and discussing concepts such as line choice, points of no return, and islands of safety using real-world trail examples. And at the end of each video, I'll put it all together and show you my fastest top-to-bottom run. In the end, a technical trail is just a complicated puzzle and it's your job to solve it. So let's get started. Alright, for episode 1, we are up on lovely Burke Mountain today, and we're going to tackle a double black trail called Deliverance. Now, if you've been a fan of this channel, you know that I quite like this trail and it's very feature dense. So later on, we're going to hop off the bike and take a look at some of the trails and some of the features in third person and really pick them apart. So for the entrance, you see on the right, there's a bit of a pedal catch. On the left, there is a bit of a bar catch. So you want to do a wiggle through, and then once you feel clear, you can head right on in. And we have a little bit of a root ball. And up here is a pretty tricky corner. So anytime it's wet, this angled log is pretty deadly. So what you want to do is you want to get your front tire as wide as possible. And then if your rear tire needs to slide, it can slide around. So today, it's not too bad, but anytime there's a little bit of moisture, that thing is pretty scary. Here we have a bit of a root ball. And here you can cut a little bit inside on the corner, straighten them both out. And then we have a bit of a drop. Could probably roll it, but definitely safer just to drop it. Whew. Little roll here. Hit my link arm on that. And then, before we get into the really good stuff, we have a couple of tight switchbacky style corners. And the key with this section is you want to start pretty wide and then cut in so that your front tire takes a wide path and your rear tire doesn't get caught on the inside of things. So this is a good example of it. You want to go quite wide with your front. Make sure your rear doesn't hit anything important. You can keep going. And same with this one. You want to keep your front really wide because your rear is going to take a more inside line. And just make it right around. And then we are at the first big crux section. So let's take a look. Okay, so coming out of this loose left-hander, we have a bit of a root ball. Now, what's scary about this one is this angled log and that angled log, because anytime there's any bit of moisture, they're going to want to slide your tires downward. So in order to make them as easy as possible, you want to be able to straighten out this line so that you know exactly where you're aiming. And to do that, I would take a quite high line over these roots, straighten out this tougher section, and then in this pocket corner is our island of safety. So stop in there, you have tons of room, and you're going to be quite safe. And then we have what I would say is the 3-part crux. So we start off with a bit of a rock garden here. Now there's 2 different lines. You can either go high and then exit over the rock, or you go lower, more inside, and exit over the dirt. It's kind of personal preference, but I tend to follow the rock line when I'm going quick because that opens up the corner a little bit more. Taking a look at it from the bottom, you'll see that it definitely is not an easy feature and definitely something that the GoPro effect has quite an impact on. By the time you get down here, you're going to have a little bit of room to stop if the conditions are good, and that being not too wet, not too dry. And that is your last island of safety before this thing. So as soon as your front wheel dips below this log right here, that is your point of no return. And thankfully this is a roll due to the wood that's been placed in the transition. But on this wood, it's not the most grippy, so you're going to want to control your speed. You probably won't be able to slow down, but at the best, you'll be able to maintain your speed. So it's actually a little bit hard and awkward to walk due to how steep it is. But if you look around the corner, definitely don't look there. That's the walking line. You find your next island of safety. So 3 features in relatively short succession, and then there's one more to finish the line. So this doesn't look too bad from up here. What you do notice is that there's a knuckle on this tree on the right, and there's a flat spot carved out of it. So the way that I find is easiest to ride this feature is coming out of this woodwork. You want to set up actually a little bit wide so your front tire goes into this stump notch right here. And what that does is as you turn, your front tire takes a wide path, your rear tire takes a more inside path, and you don't get caught up on that route. So just to go down and give you a third perspective out here. This section is super cool with all of these rocks placed almost like artwork into the stump in the tree. But your front tire takes a line basically right down the notch from that top cutout, and then your rear tire kind of takes whatever path it wants to, slightly inward of that. And once you're on that, usually if you have some speed, I tend to actually go over this route right here. And what that does is it opens up the corner coming in and the corner coming out a little bit. So not required by any stretch, but it takes that little chicane out and then you don't have to go around the rock. So definitely a pretty full-on section here. What I find is easiest is rolling through all of it. And usually you're able to roll through with comfort at each of the islands of safety. But if you want to stop, you are more than welcome and more than likely able to. So let's get back up there and see if we can link it all together while talking through what I just mentioned. It's also worth noting that when riding trails that are technical like this, conditions play a big impact on how you approach things. And trails like Deliverance are not supposed to be ridden in the wet, because you will damage a lot of the dirt sections and the woodwork tends to be a bit unsafe. So respect what the builder wishes you to do. In this case, thank you B&M for all your hard work here, and ride this trail when it's dry. Okay, putting it all together. So just finish this left-hander. What I want to do is get pretty outside here, pretty high, and then cut down, straight line to my island of safety. Now I can line up, pick which line I like. Going slower, I actually think the dirt line's a little bit easier. So I'm going to go right over this peak, and I'm going to go aim for the dirt, and I can stop again at the next island of safety. Now this part, you can drop it at speed, it's pretty fun, but let's say we're rolling it. You can maintain your speed here. Today I could probably stop, but generally you can't. And then here, you want to go right next to the stump, make your way inward, over the root. And there is crux number 1. All in all, not too bad. I think the key is to not panic when you're in those sort of point of no return situations, but super fun section. The next feature is a question I get asked a lot, and that is, how do I know whether something is a drop or a roll? And this one is the perfect example, because depending on who you ask, they say it cannot be rolled or it's absolutely a roll. And the easiest way to check is relatively obvious. You dip your bike over, and in this bike, for example, I'm basically not touching it. The link arm is quite poorly laid out for technical, like slow speed technical trail riding. So on this bike, due to the wheelbase and due to how low that link arm sits, I'm going to treat this as a drop. But if you have a shorter wheelbase bike or are more comfortable rolling steeper stuff, you definitely can roll this due to that piece of tarp and all the woodwork leading you down to the rock garden. So let's just take a second look at this one. So bike for scale up there, you can see that it's probably about 1 meter high all in, maybe a little bit bigger. But if you want to roll it, you can roll it. If you want to drop it, you can drop it. But when factoring in that decision, I definitely look at what the runout looks like. That's probably number 1. And what I see here is a decently off-camber piece of wood that isn't super rough cut cedar. So I'm not expecting to have a ton of grip on this, especially if there would be a bit of dampness, as evidenced by all these slide marks. So as soon as you drop or roll, you want to be in full control of your speed to be able to ride this section with, I guess, safe confidence. And after this piece of woodwork, if you do carry a little bit too much speed, the next bridge is a lot grippier because it is that rougher cut cedar. And all you have to do is go between the logs and make it around the corner. So let's go try it. Okay, so since I've determined I want to use this as a drop, I want to carry a little bit of speed in where I'm comfortable manualing off and landing both tires even. So poke out, on the brakes, and now I have a safe amount of speed to ride the next section. So tight little bridge here, and another little rock here, which is pretty fun. And then we have the next crux. So this one is actually a little bit scarier than the other two we've looked at, and that is because you are in the feature for a long time. And what I mean by that is the distance between your point of no return, which is right here, and your island of safety, which is actually usually on the other side of that rock down there, is quite long. So that, to me, is what makes the feature scary, is just being in it for a long time. And this is a good example of that. So right away, you can see that there is a bit of a turn onto the skinny. So I want to take a wide line with both of my wheels, and then I can make the turn before getting onto the skinny. Because if I took a tight line, I would have to be turning onto the skinny, and that's just an easy way to lose balance. So once you come down here, you'll see that, first of all, it's a fair bit bigger and steeper than the GoPro effect may lead you to believe. And you get into this section which is some rock work, really cool, in a wood ladder. Now, you definitely don't want to leave the wood ladder. That would just be a recipe for a disaster. But inside on the rock work, you often cannot stop. So I see a lot of skid marks, and if this section's good, you could probably stop, but I just wouldn't count on it necessarily. And we have another skinny. So the second one doesn't have the grippy material that the first one has, but it is actually quite grippy, and you just want to control your speed because your true island of safety is at the bottom in the dirt. So this one's pretty fun. You just don't want to panic, don't want to grab too much front or rear brake, and then you can make the corner and continue on the trail. So a bit of exposure off to the left and right here, and quite a bit steeper than you may think. But all in all, pretty fun feature. Wheels are always on the ground, and if you're confident in your brake control and your balance, it's really not too bad. So let's get it. Okay, coming in from the previous section, we can hop on our bike, and the first thing I mentioned is we want to set up quite wide. So we stay to the left, we want to aim for the skinny right when we're starting here, and then that allows us to ride straight down and just keep a very straight, balanced line through this. Second part, I want to get off the brakes a bit more, and you can brake really hard right on the exit. So, very nice. Let's continue down. A couple of rock gardens here. This one you can actually open up a little bit wider, which makes the turn a little faster on both entrance and exit. And then we are at the next tough little section. And this is the one where people are most likely to crash. And let's figure out why. So first thing worth noting is that I know there is a large bear in the area here, and I do not want to find it, so I'm going to keep talking and keep my eyes out. So first feature is this right-hander, and this one's actually pretty tough because it's quite a sharp corner and there isn't a ton of support. So what you want to do is, again, you want to set up quite wide, maybe even over this rock or outside of this rock. And what that'll allow us to do is make this corner without having to hop, skid, or use anything else that's not super kosher. So once we've made it into this little chute, it's not too bad. It's a bit of a rock garden here. And then after this rock, we have a down ramp, something that did not used to be here, but now is here, which makes this line quite a lot safer, because before you'd have to go through the rough rock garden and then pull off of this like a little drop. And that was potentially got pretty exciting. And then continuing down, just gonna move some debris out of the way. We have a bit more of a chute, and then the reason why people crash. And that would be that root right there on the exit of the trail. So this chute gives you quite a lot of confidence and quite a lot of speed. And what you realize probably by the time you're around here is that you have a lot of speed to make that corner. And the way to get through a corner like this, especially knowing the root is there, is I want to scrub my speed early, stay quite wide, and then cut in before the root so that I don't have to deal with it. It won't slip my tires and it won't unsettle me. People do go on the inside here, and I wouldn't recommend it because as soon as you start going into this trough, you're going to get hit by that root pointing you left, and that'll point you guaranteed into that bigger root. And whether or not you crash, that's up to you, but it'll definitely be a slower, pretty awful feeling line. So I'm going to move the stick anyway because I know that people are going to go into that with some speed. But if we do find ourselves on the outside of the root, what I find is the best here is staying quite wide, even like below this root, and then you can just ride over the knuckle. And that would be a roll that would be perpendicular, so you're not likely to slide any tires. And it's the best alternative to truly going inside. So let's get up there. Let's see if we can carry some speed into the chute and see if we can get the inside line. Okay, so setting up for this one, I know that the right-hander is quite tight at the beginning, so I do my best to widen it out. And by doing that, you can do it pretty smoothly with no hops or funny business. And we roll down the wood. I'm gonna carry some speed here just to show you. If you look to the inside, you can make it to the inside of the root and smoothly around the corner. Now this section has some weird lines. This is about a 1 meter drop. You can stay to the right and catch a bit more transition. And then this one is worth talking about. So what we have here is a very similar kind of like 1 meter-ish drop to flat. However, this one has a root on the entrance, which could catch you up, so you don't want to touch your brakes on this thing at all. And then once you're on here, most people would be inclined to go straight off. And what that means is that you're going to hit your bash guard, your chain ring, your pedals, who knows what, on this rock, because that is the dead straight intuitive line. Now, there is an alternate line. If you go quite slowly, you don't need to do it as a drop. You can actually just roll down this rock garden. Makes it awkward, as you can see by people sliding out there, but it does make it fully rollable. But if you're going at speed, what I would do here is I would drop from the root onto this log ride, and then I would aim for right here. Because if you get this little V gap, which is quite easy to see when you're riding along, then you're not going to hit your pedals, your bottom bracket, your chain, whatever. And it also sets you up a little bit nicer for this corner. Now, this is where people are most likely to dab on the trail, which is put a foot down, because this rock does not look super intuitive when you come at it to ride over. But as opposed to this, 90-degree corner and then another corner out, you could pretty easily carry some speed over this rock and roll down the backside. So knowing this is here, that is 100% the line you should be taking, is just straight over, straightening out the exit section. And I will demonstrate right now. Okay, starting at the first drop, we want to stay right to catch a little bit of that transition. And then coming to this one, I'm going to go on, look for the notch, go for the notch, and then up and over the rock, straightening out the trail. So usually the fast line is also conveniently the smooth line. So it's always good to keep an eye out. This section's a little root roll into a wood bridge. The bridge has a lot of grip, so honestly, wherever you go on that root section is no problem, because you can easily control the exit. Here's usually an endo turn. It's quite tight otherwise. And then two more things. First one is this left-hander coming up. Now, it's not an intuitive backside, so what I do is I come here, aim for the rock, and then I can turn left and just roll the rest of the bike over. Not too bad, but kind of have to know it's there. And then what we hope is that there is no bear around here, so that I can show you the exit. So, final move of the trail. You start with this kind of gravelly chute into what looks like a pretty difficult piece of woodwork. But once you pick it apart, it's really not too bad. So right here, I noticed that there's a fair bit of gravel, so I want to be pretty cautious about my speed, otherwise I will be carrying it onto the feature. But first bridge is very grippy. I know I have lots of braking traction and I can stay quite wide, because if I stay wide, then I can straighten up my entrance to the skinny and not have to do any balancing or adjusting there. So stay wide with your front wheel, make the skinny straight. You have quite a bit of grip as long as you stay on this grippy material. And then for the exit, there's a tight corner around those two logs. And what you want to do, again, is you want to keep your front quite wide so that your rear doesn't hit the logs. Now, what that means is I probably aim my front like here-ish or maybe here, so that my back tire goes here, but not here. So overall, it's a bit of a committed line, and you don't really want to have to stop or have to dab or lose your balance, because you could fall into this creek section, which wouldn't be super nice. But as long as you keep your calm and come in with a nice wide line to straighten out the skinny part, you should be just fine. So let's go up and try it. Okay, coming into the final chute here, we want to control our speed on the gravelly bit, and then we want to set up quite wide on the nice bridge, cut onto the skinny in a very straight fashion, keep our front wider than the log, and then that's it. We've finished Deliverance. Super fun trail, very feature filled. So let's get back up to the top, put everything we learned together, and see how fast we can ride it. Oh my God. That was intense. Holy moly.